All right, asked about Epstein-Trump email. She holds up immigrant photos while survivors stand behind her ignored. This is insane. Let's watch this first, and I will give you my take later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those two documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you
were
unredact
lead
this?
counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking. I'm
if they're
talking.
not privileged,
Quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr.
If they're
Gomes.
not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
to
If we
continue
review
to
them and they're not
protect
privileged,
Donald
Time belongs to the
we will
member.
be happy to release them.
We'll
after
stop the
review.
clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
even though you used improper redactions to protect Donald Trump and other predators associated with Jeffrey Epstein, you did the exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted, and it was not. And it's clear this was not a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names. One is redacted. 31 are not. So someone looked at it and decided to redact something. And I will tell you that that is clearly intentional to intimidate these survivors and victims. Now, in an interview last week...
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche...
You can't go off script.
...said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and estimate and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you, who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, How many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses
Gentleman's
to
time
talk
has expired.
to, and I yield back.
We will go to the good gentleman from North Carolina, Congressman Knott.
Thank
May I
you.
have a moment, Congressman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Here we go. Here's the photograph. This is why he wanted to repeat everything that had been said previously on Epstein. This is his state, New York. You probably don't even know who this is. Wahid Mohammed from Afghanistan.
Yes, because I'm no longer a prosecutor.
Convicted of assault. Wow, he represents New York. Wow, yet he doesn't care about the illegal aliens convicted of crimes. Assault and homicide. No longer a prosecutor, so he doesn't care about his constituents. Here we go. Arson, El Salvador, Miguel Palacios. Fermin Flores Ramales, Mexico, rape.
Let's talk about the 70% of immigrants who are detained without a criminal conviction or arrest.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Time belongs to Congressman Knott.
If you're sitting there thinking, did she really just respond to a room full of survivors by holding up photographs of immigrants? You're not crazy. And frankly, the restraint Dan Goldman showed in that moment is something I could not have replicated. But here's what you need to understand about what just happened, because the context makes it so much worse. First, the law. Congress passed the Transparency Act in November 2025 with a vote of 427-1 in the House, and then it passed the Senate without a single objection. Donald Trump signed it. According to the actual text of the law, which I pulled from congress.gov, the Attorney General may not withhold, delay, or black out any record on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. The only things you're allowed to hide are details that would identify victims. That's it. So when Goldman holds up that email from the convicted financier to his associate that contains notes about Donald Trump's relationship with him, and she claims privilege, there is no privilege. It's an email between two private individuals, neither of whom is an attorney. There's no legal protection that applies here. And the law specifically says you can't hide it just to protect a public figure's reputation. When she says privileged, what she means is I don't want to. Second, and this is the part that should infuriate you, Goldman pointed out that there was an email in the files literally titled Victim List containing 32 names. One was blacked out, 31 were not. Someone looked at that document and made a conscious decision about what to hide and what to leave exposed. According to NBC News, survivors said afterward that they felt degraded and experienced a lack of empathy and a lack of humanity at the hearing. Multiple news outlets, including ABC News and PBS, confirmed that the DOJ had to take down thousands of documents from its website after the release because victim-identifying information had been so carelessly put out there. And here's the contradiction that really matters. She went on Fox News on February 21st, 2025, literally a year ago, and said the client list was sitting on my desk right now to review, those are her words, on camera. Then, in July 2025, her own Department of Justice released a memo reported by PBS, AP, and basically every outlet in the country stating that no such client list exists. The White House had to come out and claim she was actually just referring to the paperwork generally. Even Elon Musk mocked her for it, posting a series of clown memes. So the woman who promised you the client list then admitted there was no client list, then covered up the names of the people who helped him while publishing the names of victims, showed up to this hearing, and called the survivors' presence theatrics. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about who's being theatrical here. And then there's the binder. According to reporting from CNBC, CBS, and CNN, photographers at the hearing captured images of her binder, which contained a page labeled Gaipol Pramila Search History, a printout of Democratic Representative Pramila Gaipol's search queries from when she visited the DOJ to review the unredacted files. Even House Speaker Mike Johnson, not exactly a frequent critic of the Trump administration, told CNN that tracking lawmakers' search histories was inappropriate. Republican Representative Thomas Massey, who co-sponsored the Transparency Act, called it creepy. Representative Jaime Racine has asked the DOJ's own internal watchdog, the Inspector General, to investigate. So the Department of Justice set up a reading room where members of Congress could review the files and then tracked what they searched for and used it as ammunition against them. That's not law enforcement. That's spying on the people whose job is to hold you accountable. Think about that for a second. So, here's the language to use when someone asks you what happened. The Attorney General is violating a law her own boss signed. She's hiding the names of powerful men the law says she can't protect. She's exposing the names of victims the law says she must protect. She's refusing to meet with survivors who are begging to testify. And when she's caught, she changes the subject to immigration, insults the questioner, and calls the whole thing a circus while sitting in front of people whose lives were upended by the man whose files she's hiding. So, what does this actually mean for you? Well, if you're someone who believed the promise that everything is going to come out, her exact words on Fox News last year, the answer is it didn't. The DOJ released a memo in July 2025 saying it would release no further documents and that its review was complete. It took an act of Congress passed 427 T1 to force additional releases, and even then, nearly half of what was released to members of Congress remained blacked out. It's sort of like ordering a book and receiving it with every other chapter torn out and the author saying, "You're welcome." Zooming out, what happened Wednesday is a blueprint for how to kill accountability in real time. According to NPR and PBS, since taking over the DOJ, she has overseen the firing of experienced nonpartisan prosecutors who had been there for years and worked on Trump-related cases, brought charges against people she sees as political enemies, like former New York Attorney General Letitia James, charges that a federal judge threw out after ruling. The prosecutor didn't even have the legal authority to bring the case and dropped prosecutions of Trump allies. When Representative Jerry Nadler asked how many of the people who helped Epstein have been formally charged under her, the answer was zero. Not one. A year on the job with over 3 million pages of evidence, zero charges against the people who helped him. What is all of this protecting? Not the victims. Their names are the ones that got published, not justice. There have been no new charges, not transparency. The document laying out the case for charges and the written-up charges themselves are still under lock and key. This is protecting one person's name from appearing in an embarrassing email between a late convicted financier and his convicted associate. The same person, by the way, who stood in front of the country and said the files would be released. The same person whose administration promised this would be different. Remember, this is the same person who couldn't produce a client list that she told America was on her desk. Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who co-authored the very law that forced these files out, didn't mince words. According to CBS News, Massie said the DOJ did literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, referring to the exposure of victim names while shielding the powerful men involved. He called the DOJ's tracking of lawmakers' search queries creepy and said the nicest possible explanation was that they were trying to improve their service. But that theory falls apart when you consider she showed up with the search data printed out alongside what Massie described as flashcards with insults to embarrass members of Congress. When the nicest thing you can say about the DOJ is that maybe they were running a customer satisfaction program for congressional oversight, you might have a problem. As of today, the House Judiciary Committee Democrats have called this a massive cover-up. Jaime Rashin has asked the DOJ's internal watchdog to investigate the monitoring of lawmakers. The survivors who showed up wearing white shirts reading, "The truth is, survivors are still waiting," have still not been interviewed by her DOJ. And the document laying out the case for charges and the written-up charges against the people who helped him remain under lock and key, a Republican co-sponsor of this legislation stood in the same hearing and called this a massive failure. This is about whether the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country is being used to protect associates of a convicted criminal because one of those associates happens to be the president. And the answer to that question was visible in the hearing room on Wednesday, in the women standing behind her with their hands raised while she sat with her arms crossed, refusing to turn around. You know, back in the setup, I mentioned you shouldn't try to gaslight Indiana Jones about the artifact. It turns out the artifact was in the room the whole time. She just refused to look at it. If this breakdown helped you understand what really happened, hit like so more people see it. Comment below with your thoughts because these conversations matter and your voice adds pressure for accountability. Share this video with someone who needs the context the headlines leave out. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss the next deep dive. This is Sophie Bennett. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.